feeling, like the heat from a cup of coffee feels so simple? Well, a brand new theory is suggesting the answer isn't about what our brain is processing, but in what it decides is good enough. So today, we are diving into the consciousness threshold. I mean, really think about it. You touch a warm mug, and that experience is just immediate. It's unified. You just feel hot. It's this single, unmistakable sensation. But why? With all the complex stuff happening under the hood, why does it feel so incredibly straightforward? Because what's actually going on is, well, it's an event of almost unbelievable physical complexity. We're talking trillions of molecules vibrating, slamming kinetic energy into your skin. Thousands of your nerve receptors are firing off in these crazy, complex patterns, sending a literal storm of raw data screaming towards your brain. It's a whole universe of information in a single touch.
And yet, you don't experience any of that chaos, do you? Nope. Your conscious mind gets handed this neat, tidy little package, a super compressed object that's just labeled hot. So where did all that complexity just vanish to? How does a hurricane of data become one simple feeling?
Well, a fascinating new theory proposes a pretty radical answer. The idea, it's called conscious representational processing based on cost-benefit evaluation, or just CRPBCE for short. It suggests that consciousness isn't about perfectly recreating reality at all. Instead, its main job is to simplify reality, to just massively compress it, and then, and this is the kicker, to decide that this simplified version is good enough to act on.
So how in the world does our brain pull off this incredible compression trick? Well, the theory actually breaks it down into a really clear four-step process.
Okay, so first, it all starts with some complex thing out there in the world. Our hot cup of coffee. Then, the brain does this radical reduction, basically tossing out all the useless data to get right to the core signal. Next, it binds what's left to a stable internal concept, our idea of hot. And then finally, we get to the most crucial step of them all, acceptance. The brain essentially looks at this simplified model and says, yep, this is good enough to work with.
And that right there is the core idea in a nutshell. Consciousness isn't just about reducing information, it's the acceptance of that reduction. You could almost say that acceptance is the secret sauce, the active ingredient that turns plain old data processing into what actually feels like a conscious experience.
Now this idea of acceptance, it's not just some passive filtering going on. Oh no, it's an active decision, a judgment call, that this theory places right at the very heart of what consciousness is. Just think about it this way. A simple thermostat in your house, it also reduces information, right? It takes the entire room's temperature and boils it down to a binary state, on or off. But of course, we don't think a thermostat is conscious. The theory says the difference is that our brain doesn't just react, it actively accepts the simplified model as its working reality. And this critical decision point even gets its own name in the theory, the acceptance threshold. Think of it like a line in the sand. It is the absolute minimum level of detail and accuracy your brain requires before it says, okay, that's good enough, I can work with this now.
But here's the thing. This threshold isn't just some random setting. It's the output of a constant, subconscious cost-benefit analysis. Your brain is always weighing the trade-offs.
So on one side, the brain could just keep on refining its model at the world, gathering more and more data. The upside there, a much more accurate picture of reality. The downside, it costs a ton of time and precious metabolic energy. But on the other side, it can just accept the current, simplified model. The benefit there is speed and efficiency. It lets you react in a split second. The risk, of course, is that simple model, it might be wrong.
And this gets us to the absolute core logic of that good enough decision. Your brain gives the green light, it accepts that simplified reality only when the potential cost of being wrong is lower than the definite right now cost of spending more energy to get a clearer picture. It's a deeply pragmatic calculation. So if you touch something that's just mildly warm, a quick, good enough model is totally fine. But if it's searing hot, well, the potential cost of getting that wrong is a serious injury. So in that case, the system is going to demand a much more refined, urgent signal before it accepts the hot object and triggers that reflex to pull your hand away. It's this constant, high-stakes negotiation between being right and being fast.
All right, so what happens next? After that good enough decision gets made, how does this newly accepted, simplified reality actually go on to shape our thoughts and our actions?
Well, once an object like hot is accepted by the system, it basically becomes real for all intents and purposes. It's the version of reality that gets written into your memory. It's what you're going to use to predict what happens next. It's how you assign value. This is bad or this is good. And ultimately, it's the solid ground on which you base your actions.
And here is a really critical point. This whole process is a one-way street. The theory actually points to a mathematical rule called the data processing inequality, which is a fancy way of saying that once you've simplified the data, once you've made the summary, you can't ever perfectly recreate the original complex reality from it. that extra information is just gone. Poof, for good.
So all of this leads to a pretty stunning, and maybe even a little unsettling implication, one that takes us right out of the world of biology and straight into the world of artificial intelligence.
You see, if this theory is correct, it isn't just a description of how our brains happen to be wired. It's a recipe. It's providing a functional blueprint for the kind of architecture you would need to actually build a conscious system from the ground up.
And the paper itself really doesn't mince words on this point. This isn't just a theory of what consciousness is. It's a blueprint for what you have to build to get it. It's essentially saying, hey, you want to build a conscious machine? Here are the instructions.
So what if we built an AI that doesn't just process data, but reduces it, binds it to internal objects, and, this is the most important part, uses a good enough acceptance threshold that's tied to its own internal goals and values? Well, that AI could achieve what the paper calls perceived consciousness, a functional, architectural equivalent of our own felt experience. Which leaves us with one final, very provocative question. If a machine is built not to perfectly compute reality, but to simplify and accept its own good enough version of it, just like we do, will we have any logical basis left for saying it isn't conscious? That's a question we might have to answer a whole lot sooner than any of us think.